In the year 2387, Earth was no longer a lonely speck in the cosmos. Humans had evolved from a fractured species, consumed by conflict, into a united powerhouse that reached across the stars. The United Earth Federation (UEF) had unified the nations, leading to an unprecedented era of peace and cooperation. Technological advancements were extraordinary, and interstellar travel was no longer a dream, it was a reality. The discovery of faster-than-light travel, called stellar gate, had catapulted humanity's reach into distant corners of the Milky Way. But despite the vast distances already covered, there was always a sense of restlessness, a yearning to push further, to know what lay beyond. Humanity's expansion had been a slow crawl, confined to nearby star systems. Yet one question echoed in the minds of the greatest scientists, philosophers, and engineers: what lies beyond our galaxy? Dr. Evelyn Hayward, the chief astrophysicist of the UEF, was among the first to conceptualize a mission to the mysterious intergalactic space beyond the Milky Way. For years she had studied the faint traces of other galaxies on the edges of the known universe, detecting anomalies that hinted at vast, unexplored realms. These were not just distant stars, but whole systems that defied current understanding. What was out there? Were we alone? Her project, known as Project Odyssey, was born out of that curiosity. It wasn't a mission for colonization or resources. Humanity had everything they needed at home. This was a mission of discovery. The human race had always been driven by the need to understand their place in the cosmos. In every ancient myth and every scientific breakthrough, the story was always the same: to explore, to seek, and to know. On the day the project was greenlit, the entire UEF Council gathered in the shining, metallic halls of the Federation Command Center, their eyes fixed on the holoscreen before them. Dr. Hayward stood at the front, her projection shimmering in the center, but it was her words that truly captured their attention. We stand on the precipice of the unknown. We have explored our solar system, and we have begun the work of exploring neighboring systems. But the universe is vast, and we are but infants in this grand expanse. Project Odyssey will take us beyond what we have known, into the heart of what lies beyond the Milky Way. Together, we will answer the questions that have haunted humanity for millennia. And we will do so as a unified species. We will show the galaxy what humanity is capable of. There was silence in the room before the council erupted into applause. It was a moment of profound agreement, a shared belief that humanity's destiny was written in the stars. The mission was not just about exploration, it was about proving to themselves, and to any other intelligent civilizations that might be out there, that humanity had arrived. In the coming months, the UEF began the construction of the Etheris, a colossal ship capable of reaching beyond the Milky Way. It was a vessel unlike any other. Crafted from an alloy stronger than anything previously imagined, with engines that could bend space and time, it was both a triumph of human engineering and a beacon of hope for the future. But as the ship took shape, so too did the challenges. A team of the brightest minds, including Dr. Hayward, began their preparations for the first journey to the distant edge of the Milky Way. Their mission would push the limits of technology, endurance, and even sanity. The universe was far more treacherous than they could imagine, and they had only begun to scratch the surface. Still, as construction of the Etheris continued, it became clear that humanity's great leap forward was not just an engineering feat, it was an awakening of ambition. The desire to go beyond what had been explored, to reach the unknown, had become an intrinsic part of the human spirit. A new chapter of exploration was about to unfold. And yet, lurking at the edges of their minds, was a question they could not ignore. What if they were not alone? As the Etheris neared completion, excitement surged through humanity. The ship was designed to be self-sustaining, with advanced artificial intelligence, multiple layers of shielding against cosmic radiation, and vast research facilities. This was more than just a journey, it was the next stage in humanity's evolution. For years, every nation on Earth had poured resources into the project, their collective will shaping this vessel of discovery. Dr. Evelyn Hayward, still at the helm, found herself oscillating between exhilaration and trepidation. The universe had always been full of wonder, but now she would be part of a journey that could uncover things beyond her wildest dreams. Or, as some feared, reveal humanity to forces they had not yet reckoned with. The final preparations for the mission were met with an air of solemnity. The Etheris was not only a marvel of science, but a symbol of humanity's collective resolve to face the unknown. Its crew, carefully selected from the brightest minds in their fields, was diverse. Engineers, scientists, explorers, even diplomats, just in case they were not alone. But the most important part of the mission was the stellar gate drive, the new hyperwarp engine that would propel them into the uncharted regions of space at unimaginable speeds. The launch day arrived. Crowds gathered to watch as the enormous ship, standing at the edge of Earth's atmosphere, prepared to leave the cradle of humanity behind. Every gaze on Earth was fixed on the spectacle, a shining reminder of what humanity could achieve when united by a common cause. The ship's engines hummed with quiet power, and soon the countdown began. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. A deep, resonating rumble echoed through the atmosphere as the Etheris lifted off the ground, ascending into the heavens. For a brief moment, it was just another spacecraft breaking through the upper atmosphere. But then, with a surge of energy, the ship's stellar gate drive activated. The stars themselves stretched into lines of light, and the ship disappeared into the abyss of space, leaving Earth behind. In the blink of an eye, they were beyond the Milky Way. The crew on board the Etheris watched in awe as the galaxy they had known became a swirling haze in the distance, a memory fading into the infinite dark. Dr. Hayward stood at the observation deck, her eyes scanning the view of distant galaxies, so many of them still untouched. But there was an odd quiet in the air. For all the excitement, there was also an unsettling realization: they were completely alone. The vastness of space had never felt more profound. With every passing moment, the silence grew more palpable. Days turned into weeks as the Etheris sailed through intergalactic space. The crew found themselves in awe of the universe's beauty, strange nebulae, supernova remnants, and alien star systems beyond comprehension. Yet, as they ventured further, the crew began to notice anomalies. Subtle fluctuations in their instruments. Patterns in the cosmic radiation. They weren't sure at first, but something didn't feel right. Then, on the 45th day of the mission, the first distress signal was received. It wasn't from Earth. It wasn't even from the Milky Way. The signal, transmitted in a complex code, came from a distant point in space, a location that appeared to be deep within a massive galactic void. The coordinates were impossible to reach without the technology the Etheris possessed, but the question remained: who or what was sending the message? Hayward called a meeting with the ship's command staff. "This is unprecedented," she said, her voice calm but intense. "We thought we were alone in the dark. But now we have a signal. We must investigate. We cannot ignore it." The crew hesitated. It could be a trap, some form of ancient alien technology that had somehow survived the centuries. Or it could be a message from an intelligent species, waiting to make contact with humanity for the first time. "The coordinates lead us to a system that doesn't exist on any map. Not even the most advanced star charts show anything there," said Captain Magnus Thorpe, the commander of the Etheris. "We don't know what's out there, Evelyn. It could be dangerous." But Dr. Hayward's conviction was unshaken. "We cannot turn back. We were always meant to push forward, to go beyond what we know. This is our purpose." With a shared sense of duty, the crew voted to follow the signal, preparing for the unknown that lay ahead. As the Etheris altered its course, the first whispers of danger echoed through the crew's minds. What lay ahead could change everything humanity knew about the universe. The journey toward the coordinates of the mysterious signal was tense. As the Etheris traveled further into uncharted space, the crew couldn't shake the sense of unease that had settled over them. The stars, once a familiar sight, now seemed foreign, almost oppressive. The deeper they ventured into the void, the quieter everything became. Even the AI systems, usually brimming with life and chatter, fell silent, seemingly overwhelmed by the weight of the unknown. Dr. Hayward, ever the optimist, couldn't help but feel the pull of curiosity. Every star system they passed, every distant galaxy that came into view, only served to remind her of how much there was to discover. And yet, with each passing light year, she felt an increasing sense of foreboding. The signal they had intercepted was unlike anything Earth's technology had ever encountered. It was complex, but at its core there was an unsettling repetition, a pattern that made the signal feel almost alive. The crew remained focused on their tasks, though their conversations became sparse. They no longer exchanged idle chatter or speculative theories about what they might find. It was as though the weight of the silence itself had made them cautious, uncertain of the very air they breathed. Only Captain Thorpe seemed outwardly unaffected, always standing tall at the bridge, staring into the depths with a look that bordered on defiance. On the 68th day of their journey, the Etheris arrived at the coordinates, nestled in the heart of a starless region of space. The darkness was thick here, and even their advanced instruments struggled to detect anything. No stars, no nebulae, just an empty void stretching out endlessly. It felt as though they had entered a place that time itself had forgotten. The signal grew stronger the closer they got, now audible through the ship's communication systems. It was a series of repeating bursts, irregular but undeniably intelligent. A strange hum seemed to vibrate in the air, almost as if the ship itself were resonating with it. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but they pressed forward. "Prepare for entry," Captain Thorpe ordered, his voice calm but with an edge of concern. "Dr. Hayward, are you sure about this?" Evelyn nodded firmly. "This is what we came for. Whatever is sending this signal, we need to understand it." They approached the heart of the void, and then, as if the universe itself had decided to part for them, a structure emerged from the darkness. It was massive, so large that the ethers seemed like a grain of sand in comparison. A colossal, monolithic form, its surface made of a material that reflected no light, yet it shimmered with an eerie iridescence. There were no windows, no obvious means of entry, just an immense, angular silhouette that defied the natural laws of physics. The crew watched in stunned silence. The ship had stumbled upon something older, far older than humanity itself. A relic of an alien civilization, or perhaps something even more mysterious. "I've never seen anything like this," said Lieutenant Sarah Ramirez, the ship's lead engineer, her voice barely above a whisper. She ran her fingers over her tablet, scanning every wavelength for any sign of the structure's purpose. "It's not registering as any kind of known material. And there's something else." Dr. Hayward turned toward her, sensing the weight of her words. "What is it, Lieutenant?" Ramirez hesitated. "There's a presence here. It's subtle, but I can feel it. It's almost as though the structure is alive, watching us." The crew stood frozen, staring at the enormous, silent monument. Every instinct told them to approach with caution, but the signal, this ancient, cryptic message, drove them forward. Captain Thorpe ordered the ship to move closer. They hovered just outside the structure within a safe distance, and began transmitting signals to communicate, to see if any response would come. The ethers hummed with anticipation, but all remained eerily still. Then, as if responding to their presence, the structure's surface rippled. Slowly, shapes began to form, appearing and disappearing like shadows. Abstract, shifting geometries that defied understanding. In moments, the ship was surrounded by these formations, floating symbols, glowing briefly before they vanished. The entire crew felt it, an overwhelming sense of being watched not just by the structure but by something far older, far more powerful than they could comprehend. For the first time since they had left Earth, a thought crossed every mind on board the Ethris. What if we're not meant to be here? The shimmering symbols began to pulse faster now, almost rhythmically as if trying to communicate. They were too complex, too alien for the crew to decode in real time, but Dr. Hayward was determined. The first step, she knew, was to understand. She activated the ship's advanced translation algorithms, hoping that they could make sense of the alien message. Then, with a sudden surge of energy, the symbols halted. A final shape, a perfect geometric form, flashed across their screens, and for a split second, everything went black. The silence that followed was deafening. The crew waited. The lights in the control room flickered, and the air felt thick with tension. The message was clear now, but it was not what they had expected. A voice, deep and ancient, echoed across the ship's communication system, sending chills through everyone on board. Asterisk, "You are not the first." Asterisk. The voice that reverberated through the ship was unlike anything the crew had ever heard. It was not mechanical or artificial. There was a deep, unsettling organic resonance to it, as if it emanated from something far older than anything they could comprehend. For a long, tense moment, the crew stood frozen, the weight of those words hanging in the air like a fog they couldn't shake off. Asterisk, "You are not the first." Asterisk. Dr. Hayward's heart raced as the words repeated in her mind. She looked around at the stunned faces of her crew. The silence was thick, stifling. The reality of their discovery was beginning to sink in, and it was far more unnerving than any of them had anticipated. Captain Thorpe was the first to break the silence, his voice low but steady. "What does it mean? Are there others out here? Other civilizations?" The voice did not answer immediately. Instead, the structure's surface shimmered once again, the glowing symbols now pulsing in a slow, deliberate rhythm. The message had shifted, becoming a cryptic sequence of patterns, far too intricate for any of the crew to make sense of without a translation algorithm. Dr. Hayward was quick to initiate the ship's most advanced decryption software, but she knew it would take time. "Something's happening," Lieutenant Ramirez said, her voice taut with tension. "The ship's systems are detecting anomalies in the local space-time continuum. The structure, it's resonating with something." Dr. Hayward turned sharply. "What kind of anomalies?" Ramirez glanced at her screen. It's like the fabric of space is warping. The ship's gravity well is shifting. If we don't adjust our course soon, we might get caught in whatever this is. The crew scrambled to stabilize the ship, but despite their efforts, the Etheris seemed to be slowly drawn toward the alien structure, as if the massive relic itself were exerting a gravitational pull. It was subtle at first, but growing stronger with each passing second. Captain Thorpe clenched his jaw, his face set with determination. Hold steady. We're not going anywhere until we figure out what this is. The voice echoed again, and this time it was not a simple statement. The tone shifted, becoming more deliberate, as though the structure itself was trying to convey something far more profound. Asterisk, you must listen. We have waited long. You are the inheritors. You must understand. Asterisk. The words were strange, fragmented, yet there was an undeniable urgency in them. The crew, once filled with uncertainty and fear, now felt the weight of a greater responsibility. They were being chosen, or perhaps guided, to something far beyond their understanding. The atmosphere on the ship became electric with anticipation. Dr. Hayward took a deep breath, her fingers hovering over the console. I need more time, she muttered, her mind racing to decode the message. The decryption software hummed as symbols flashed across the screen, trying to match the complex sequences to known languages or patterns. Suddenly, the ship's entire environment shifted. The walls of the Etheris began to flicker, distorting in a way that was almost physical. Gravity became unstable, and the crew was thrown off balance as the room seemed to warp and stretch. The lights dimmed and a low hum filled the air. It wasn't coming from the Etheris, it was coming from the structure. And then, as if the ship itself was coming alive, the voice spoke once more. Asterisk, the cycle has begun. You will learn what was lost. You will be the inheritors of the forgotten legacy. But beware, asterisk. The warning hung in the air like a shadow. The words, though garbled by the translation software, carried an undeniable weight. Asterisk, the past remembers. Asterisk. Before Dr. Hayward could respond, a violent pulse of energy erupted from the structure, a shockwave that rippled through the very fabric of space itself. The Etheris rocked violently, its systems failing as power flickered across the ship. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and the crew struggled to regain control. We've lost stabilization. Ramirez shouted. We're going to be pulled in if we don't. But it was too late. The gravitational forces had become overwhelming. The Etheris was no longer in control. The crew was thrown into chaos as the ship was dragged toward the alien monolith. Dr. Hayward, gripping the edge of the control panel, shouted orders. All hands brace for impact. Activate the emergency shields. The crew scrambled, but the ship was helpless against the immense force. A strange, eerie energy surrounded them, vibrating through the walls of the Etheris, distorting reality itself. And then, with a final lurch, the ship was swallowed by the structure. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. The stars outside vanished, leaving only the cold, oppressive darkness of the unknown. The crew found themselves suspended in an unnatural stillness, floating in a space that was neither part of the universe they knew nor any realm they could understand. And then, slowly, the voice spoke again, this time in a tone that carried a grim finality. Asterisk, you are here. Welcome to the Forgotten Realm. You will learn, but at a price. Asterisk. As the crew stood in stunned silence, staring at the mysterious structure, they realized the full extent of their discovery. They had crossed a line, ventured into a place where the boundaries between reality and memory blurred, where the past and future intertwined. They were no longer just explorers. They had become the inheritors of a forgotten legacy. And they had no idea what that would mean for humanity. The Etheris hung suspended in the uncharted space, its systems barely functioning after the violent pulse that had pulled them into the alien structure. It was as if the ship had become a part of something much greater than itself, a cosmic anomaly that defied all known laws of physics. The crew stood in stunned silence, trying to process the enormity of what had just occurred. Their surroundings had shifted, but to what? The very nature of reality seemed to have bent and warped around them. Dr. Hayward gripped the control panel, her knuckles white. Her mind raced to catch up with the gravity of their situation. This is not just a ship anymore, she murmured under her breath. We've crossed into something else entirely. The captain's voice cut through the tense atmosphere. Report, Lieutenant Ramirez. What's the status of the systems? Ramirez was working furiously at her console, sweat beading on her forehead as she tried to override the malfunctioning systems. The Etheris is intact for now, but I can't get a full diagnostic. The pulse we encountered has interfered with the ship's power grid and navigation systems. I'm reading something in the environment. I can't tell if it's coming from the structure or if it's part of our own systems malfunctioning. But there's something alive out there. Dr. Hayward's pulse quickened. Alive? How can something be alive in this space? Not alive in the traditional sense, Ramirez replied, eyes wide. I don't know how to describe it. It's like a sentience. Something that is interacting with the ship, with us. Hayward felt a chill run through her spine. She turned her attention back to the ominous shape of the alien structure in the distance, now looming large on their view screen. Despite the lack of visible windows or entrances, the surface seemed to pulse rhythmically like a heart. Whatever it was watching them, aware of their presence. And it had just welcomed them into a realm that they were not prepared for. Suddenly, the ship's lights flickered, and a low hum reverberated through the walls, as though the very structure of the Etherius was being resonated with by the alien entity. A new message appeared on the main screen, this time in a complex, geometric pattern. It was the same language the crew had first encountered, but now it was more coherent, almost spoken in the form of shapes and symbols. Asterisk, you have crossed the threshold. You are now in the domain of the forgotten. This is the beginning of your trial. Asterisk. The crew exchanged uncertain glances. A trial? They had thought they were the ones seeking answers, but now it seemed as if they had been lured into something far beyond their comprehension. What did this entity mean by a trial? And why had it chosen them? Before anyone could respond, the structure reacted once again, this time with a sharp burst of energy that illuminated the surrounding void. The light didn't just illuminate the structure, it tore through the fabric of reality itself, revealing a staggering, surreal landscape beyond. The boundaries between time and space seemed to crumble, replaced by fragmented memories, images of long-forgotten worlds and distant civilizations that no longer existed. Dr. Hayward's voice shook as she spoke. What is this? Where are we? This place? Ramirez whispered, staring in awe. It's not just outside space, it's outside time. These aren't just images, they're memories, echoes of the past, of worlds that came before us. The crew watched, mesmerized as the images intensified, showing entire galaxies in various stages of life and death, civilizations rising and falling in rapid succession. The fragments were chaotic, disjointed, glimpses into forgotten epochs of the universe, lost to time. Yet, within the maelstrom of cosmic history, there was a singular truth that began to emerge. Dr. Hayward's mind raced. The forgotten. This place is a repository of lost knowledge, a relic of civilizations that were wiped from existence. But why? What wiped them out? And what is this trial we must face? The message reappeared on the screen, now clearer and more commanding. Asterisk, to inherit the legacy of the forgotten is to embrace the burden of their knowledge. You will face the trials they faced. If you succeed, you will transcend the limitations of your kind. If you fail, asterisk. The voice trailed off, leaving an unspoken threat hanging in the air. No one spoke for a long moment. The weight of what was being asked of them settled on the crew, heavy and unyielding. This is what we've been sent for, Dr. Hayward said quietly, a mix of awe and fear in her voice. To become more than we are. But at what cost? I don't know if I'm ready for this, Captain Thorpe admitted, the first sign of doubt creeping into his usually stoic demeanor. If this trial is anything like the civilizations before us, then we may not survive it. The hum in the ship grew louder, reverberating through the hull, and the imagery on the screen began to shift once more, showing flashes of chaotic destruction. Supernovae, implosions, worlds torn apart by forces too powerful to comprehend. The Etherius was at the center of it now, and the crew could feel the tension, the weight of the unseen forces pressing in from all sides. We need to make a decision, Dr. Hayward said. We have the opportunity to unlock a knowledge that could change the course of humanity forever. But we have to be prepared for the consequences. Captain Thorpe's face was grim as he made the only decision he could. Initiate the trial. We're in this together. Whatever it takes, we have to see it through. The ship shuddered again and the darkness around them deepened, wrapping the crew in the cold, unfeeling silence of the forgotten realm. A new path was now laid out before them, one that would test the very fabric of humanity, and decide if they could rise above the trials of the past, or fall like so many civilizations before them. As the Etherius drifted deeper into the heart of the unknown, the crew braced themselves for what lay ahead. What they would find in the depths of this ancient trial could reshape the universe itself. Or perhaps it would be their undoing. The Etherius drifted deeper into the heart of the forgotten realm, surrounded by the distorted remnants of a cosmic history that no human had ever seen. Time seemed to bend and warp around them as the images on the screen continued to flash in chaotic bursts, worlds in flames, galaxies collapsing, and civilizations rising only to be consumed by their own hubris. The weight of the unknown pressed down on the crew, and each of them felt the pull of the trial that had now begun. Dr. Hayward stood at the helm, her hands trembling as she studied the data coming in. The ship's systems were still partially offline, but the worst of the damage had been repaired. The ship hummed with a strange energy, as if something vast, ancient, and unknowable were coursing through its very framework. The Etheris was no longer just a ship, it had become a conduit for the forgotten knowledge of the universe. "We're crossing into something no one was ever meant to understand," Lieutenant Ramirez said, her voice barely above a whisper. She had never looked more shaken, her eyes darting to the strange, ever-shifting shapes that now surrounded them. "We're moving through the wreckage of civilizations, but they're alive in these images. Echoes of their past." Dr. Hayward nodded. "This is more than just an archive. The knowledge here is integrated with the structure itself. It's like the Etheris is becoming part of it just as we are." The crew was now fully aware that they were not simply passing through, they were becoming part of the ancient machinery of the Forgotten Realm. The trial had already begun and there was no turning back. Suddenly the voice returned, deep and resonant, its words carrying an undeniable authority. "The trial has begun. You must prove your worth to inherit the knowledge of the forgotten. You will face the challenges of those who came before you. Your resolve will be tested, your very essence will be weighed." The voice seemed to reverberate through the walls of the ship, vibrating in the very air they breathed. It was not an external sound, it was in their minds, threading its way into their thoughts and fears. "What challenges? What are we meant to do?" Captain Thorpe's voice was firm, but his uncertainty echoed through the silence. He gripped the railing of the bridge, eyes narrowed. "We don't even know what we're up against." The voice responded as though it had been waiting for the question, its tone both patient and unforgiving. "The first test is a test of unity. Your strength lies in your ability to work as one. Those who fail to cooperate will be cast into oblivion." Dr. Hayward felt the weight of the words settle deep in her chest. Unity. The one thing that had driven humanity's greatest achievements was now their most crucial asset in this trial. The crew had been selected for their individual talents, their knowledge, their expertise. But now they would need to merge those strengths, to act as a single cohesive force, if they were to pass the test. "Everyone listen up," Dr. Hayward said, her voice commanding but calm. "We've been through the worst of it. We've faced adversity before and we've come through. Now is the time for all of us to work together. No exceptions." The crew exchanged determined looks, their faces hardening with resolve. Each of them understood that failure was not an option. The ship, their home, was being altered by forces far greater than anything they could comprehend, and their mission had taken on a significance far beyond exploration. This was the future of humanity at stake. The structure around them trembled again, and the walls seemed to pulse with energy as though responding to their thoughts. Then in an instant the ship was plunged into total darkness. There was no warning, no time to prepare. The artificial lights flickered and then died completely, leaving only the cold, oppressive blackness of the Forgotten Realm. Then came a sound, a deep, resonant rumbling, like the sound of a distant storm. It was a growl but not a natural one. It felt more like a living entity shifting and stirring, ready to strike. "Are we under attack?" Lieutenant Ramirez asked, her voice tight with fear. "No," Dr. Hayward said, her voice steady but filled with unease. "This isn't an attack. It's the trial. We need to stay focused." Suddenly, a burst of light shot through the blackness, illuminating the room in an ethereal, ghostly glow. As the light stabilized, the crew saw what they were facing. A vast, intricate web of glowing threads, like strands of energy stretching across the expanse of the room, seemingly infinite. "This is impossible," Lieutenant Ramirez breathed, staring at the webs that now surrounded them. "It's not just an illusion," Dr. Hayward murmured, eyes wide. "These threats, they're alive. Connected to the very fabric of the Forgotten Realm." The voice spoke again, its tone ominous. "The first test is upon you. The threads represent the unity of the forgotten. You must cross them, but you must do so as one. If you fall into the abyss, you will be lost to time, your names forgotten as those before you." The crew stared at the web, its complexity almost dizzying. They were going to have to navigate through it, together. There was no room for error, no room for individual triumphs. It was a test of unity in its purest form. "We need a plan," Dr. Hayward said, her voice sharp. Each of us has a skill that can contribute. We need to move as one, stay connected, and not let anything distract us." The crew members nodded in agreement, each knowing that their individual talents and strengths would now be tested in ways they could not yet imagine. They were no longer mere explorers, they were participants in a cosmic trial, with their fates intertwined with the forgotten civilizations that had come before them. Together they moved forward, carefully placing their steps on the glowing threads. The room seemed to pulse around them, shifting with every movement. Every step they took felt like they were walking through time itself, each thread an echo of a civilization's rise and fall. The crew moved as one, their minds and bodies synchronized, understanding the weight of the moment. As they crossed the last of the glowing threads, a tremor shook the ship. The voice spoke one final time, its tone both triumphant and foreboding. "Asterisk, you have passed the first test. But the journey has just begun. There are more challenges ahead. The forgotten will not yield their knowledge easily." Asterisk. Dr. Hayward looked out into the vast, unknowable expanse of the forgotten realm. The trial had only begun, but they had passed their first test. And they had proven something essential, that humanity, united in purpose, could face even the darkest depths of the universe and survive. The trials ahead would be more difficult. But they were ready. For the first time in history, humanity had stepped into the heart of the unknown, prepared to inherit the legacy of the stars. And nothing, no force, no trial would stop them from claiming it.